Hey, what's up, everyone? Hope you're feeling good. I've been poking through the notes and the under-the-hood details of the Core Keeper update that landed on November 27th, 2025, build 1.1.2.9. And I want to walk you through what's actually different, why it matters, and what the practical ripple effects are for players and modders. This isn't a rushed run-through. It's a deeper look at the specifics, the subtle fixes that make a bigger difference than they look on paper, and the kinds of edge cases that can break a run if you're not aware of them. Let's just talk plainly about the changes and why the people who keep sprawling bases, heavy mod setups, or long-term saves should probably care. First up, one of the quirkiest bugs fixed was a character appearance issue where only the first character created in a session would have randomized appearance settings. For people who jump into a multiplayer lobby with multiple fresh characters or try to churn out alts for aesthetic variety, that could produce inconsistent expectations. One character would get the randomized traits, while subsequent characters defaulted or behaved differently. It's a small user-facing annoyance, but one that chips at polish. Fixing it just makes the first moments with a new character less surprising in a why does only this one look different way. What's far more consequential is the save load resource corruption issue that could cause unmined ore to disappear when a world was reloaded, especially around dungeon or scene geometry. That's the kind of silent data loss that ruins long-running campaigns, because who notices a missing vein until weeks of play later when a planned build or craft suddenly becomes impossible without an alternate source? The technical pattern here is typical of complex scene loading bugs. When chunks of the map reinstantiate, some object references or spawn states can fail to persist correctly, and the ore entity either never spawns or gets culled. It's a fix that protects player time and progression more than it sounds like, because the cost of losing resources mid-run is usually not just the ore, but the hours and strategies built around it. Another change touches crafting UI interaction. Specifically, there was an exploit involving parchment recipes where using the mouse slot during crafting could allow players to avoid paying the full material cost. The devs patched that exploit. I won't detail how to replicate it. The important takeaway is that any economy or coop world where items are shared or scarce will now behave more predictably. For folks who run servers that prize resource balance, that patch restores a bit of integrity. It also subtly impacts modded recipes or QOL mods that touch crafting UI, because if those mods relied on edge case behavior, they might need adjustment. Visual and geometry fixes also got attention. Invisible boulders in the Crystal Meteor scene were made visible again. Invisible obstacles are the kind of thing that break platforming precision and make bosses or events feel unfair rather than challenging. Cleaning up invisible geometry keeps those set pieces functioning as designed, so movement and collision behave like the level designer intended. Mod development and testing got a small but meaningful tweak. When running on a mod debug testing branch, the game no longer auto-restarts with mods silently disabled if a mod fails to load. That's a developer-focused improvement, but it changes tester workflows. Previously, the automatic fallback could mask the fact a mod had crashed on load because the game would essentially try to continue with mods turned off. Now, the failure is more explicit, which forces clearer error handling and better log inspection. That's a double-edged sword. It's more predictable for debugging, but it does require mod authors and server operators to pay more attention to logs and startup output rather than assuming a silent fallback handled it gracefully. Reading through the implications, there are a few patterns to call out. Fixes that seem cosmetic or small often prevent compound issues later. A single invisible boulder might not ruin a session, but when combined with a missing resource spawn and a subtle UI exploit, it's the accumulation that breaks runs. This patch is primarily about getting those cumulative edge cases under control, preventing state loss on load, normalizing UI behavior during crafting, and making mod load failures explicit. In other words, stability, predictability, and clear failure modes. That's the tone that comes through in the dev comments and community responses. Not a flashy content drop, but important maintenance that keeps serious players' time safe. For multiplayer and mod-heavy setups, the change in moddebug behavior is the headline to watch. It alters the expected outcome when something goes wrong during startup. Previously, an automatic restart could obscure failure. Now errors become more visible and require proactive handling. The trade-off is better visibility at the cost of needing to be slightly more hands-on with server logs. Anyone who iterates on mods locally or hosts collaborative worlds should expect slightly different startup interactions. Those who treat mods as experimental will likely appreciate the clear feedback loop because it reduces the time spent guessing whether the game silently disabled a mod. Another subtle but meaningful aspect is the community perception. Fixes to exploits and stability tend to reduce contentious forum threads and disputed server rulings. When a patch removes a crafting quirk that let one player bypass costs, it reduces conflict and makes rules for shared servers easier to enforce, without heated debates about whether something was intended. These kinds of housekeeping patches smooth out the social surface of multiplayer play, not just the technical surface. Overall, the update is small in scope but high in practical value. It's directed at making long-term play more robust and making mod development clearer. It doesn't add new biomes or systems, but it shores up the foundations that let larger runs and mod ecosystems function without weird, low-probability catastrophes. That's the kind of work that doesn't make headlines, but quietly saves people hours and grief. Whether you're someone who treasures a 100-hour world or someone who tinkers with mods and custom content, the net effect is more predictable, less brittle gameplay. And that's worth noting in its own right, because stability patches are the scaffolding that future content will hang on.